What's good, everybody? And today I wanted to make sure that you guys know, which you should already know if you've been following, that this show is for and dedicated to Black men, right? However, today, this video is for two specific groups of people within the Black community. So, group number one is going to be those of you who are like almost to the point where you're like, I'm done with the whole Black community as a whole. Like, I'm tired of just dealing with, you know what I'm saying? And the second group of people is those of you who still have not given up hope for Black people in the Black community. And you really want to see us, unite and start doing better together as a whole, because you guys are already aware of all of the negative stereotypes, statistics, and everything else around Black people as a whole. So this video is for those of you who are on the fence and almost out the door. And for those of you who still have hope and want to see what we can do to become better, more united as a community, so that we can get rid of some of those negative stigmas attached to us, which applies to all of us individually, but applies to us as a community, right? So I'm going to list off a few things here, right? And I want you to tell me, do these sound like some of the negative things that you have heard or see about the Black community or regarding the Black community? Economically, we have more hoods and impoverished areas than other groups of people. We earn less than other races at pretty much all age groups. It's harder to find work for us versus, other groups of people. I can't do business with Black folks because, and you can insert your because, they don't have good customer service, they don't have good products or whatever you've heard or have said in the past about doing business with other Black people. All right, relationships. We have few suitable partners. One issue being, masculine women, and another being feminine men, and other things in between that. Men don't take accountability for their actions and the things that they're out there doing. Women don't want to be held accountable for their decisions and their actions that they take. As men, we need to go and find other groups of women because Black women are damaged goods. As women, you should divest and go into other groups or go towards white men, as I've talked about before on this show. So those are some of the things in relationships that I hear most people say. In regards to our children, right? Our sons are raised by rappers and NBA players or sports players. They terrorize neighborhoods, those hoods that we were talking about. They creating fatherless homes out there and they breaking young girls' hearts at early ages. And then our daughters, they're dressing like grown women, right? And they are out there with a sexy red mentality. And y'all know what that is. And giving themselves, to any dude, any little dude that's out there that's willing to give them anything that looks just a little teensy bit like love. Because they haven't got it from their father or their father wasn't present to give it to them. These children are pretty much going to be what's out there available in the dating pool for my children and your children. So, that's something to pay attention to and think about. All right, and socially, we have a negative image in other communities. We either loud, we fighting, we shooting, we can't get along, and racial inferiority complex runs rampant. And what that is basically just believing, whether consciously or subconsciously, that other races, other groups are above you and your race, and the group that you belong to. Racial inferiority, you might see that when a person is saying, and of course they might not consciously know that they're doing this or that they're suffering from this complex, but they might say things like, once I move to a white neighborhood, then I've made it. And that is to say that I can't be in a good place unless I'm surrounded by white people. That is racial inferiority complex because you believe that you can't be in any place good if you are surrounded by black people. You have to be surrounded by an entire group of different people just to feel like you've arrived. That's, telling. And you might not be aware that that's what you're doing. And if you say that you have to have something from another group of people or that is associated with another group of people in any area to be a success or to have arrived, then you are displaying this characteristic. And this is something that most people don't even know that they're doing. And it's running rampant amongst those of us that are successful. So, that's how we are pretty much looked at socially. And these are the things that are usually portrayed or um, aligned with the black community that are some of the things that don't make us look all that good as a whole. All of these things that I've listed. Have you heard some of these things before? Have you seen some of these things before? Are there some things that I missed? All of those are things to just have in the back of your mind while we're continuing to go through what we're going to talk about today. So, um, while, you know, these things are bad, they also keep us from advancing as far as other groups of people are able to advance. As you have, if you've been in this world for any amount of time or in America for any amount of time, you've seen that there are other groups of people that come over here and succeed. They don't have the same negative image that we do. And our counterparts in the white community, they have been doing well here for the longest, but we seem to be the ones that are not advancing as much, and we are at the bottom statistically in all of the good stats, and then all of the negative stats, we are pretty much higher than everybody else. Now, of course, there are some outliers there in the information, but we're talking about us as a whole right now. So, um, it's important to understand what do we need to do about this? Because, something needs to be done about this, especially if we're going to have hope for the black community as a whole, right? So before we solve this problem, I need to ask you a question, right? So the question is, how do you fight an enemy that you can't see? I want you to think about that. How do you fight an enemy that you can't even see? Now, the short answer is that you can't. It's impossible for you to fight an enemy that you cannot see because you can't see it. Where you going to swing at? How do you know if you're swinging hard enough in the right direction? If you're doing the right thing, if you're doing the wrong thing to see success, you won't know because you can't even see your enemy to know what's going on and to know what to do. Right? Does that make sense? So I want to draw your attention to a book called The 48 Laws of Power, right? Because this concept is mentioned in there. And just by looking at the third law, you don't even have to get that far. The third law out of 48 says, conceal your intentions. Let's see what that means. Always conceal your intentions. If you keep people off balance and in the dark, they can't counter your efforts, send them down the wrong path with a red herring, or create a smokescreen. And by the time they realize what you're up to, it will be too late for them to interfere. Wow. So that's basically saying that, if a law of power or to have power is to conceal your intentions and keep your adversary in the dark and not let them know what you're doing so that they can't counter it, and give them smoke screens and red herrings, distractions, basically, to keep their attention and keep them focused over here while you're doing something else over here. That is what this law is saying, and it keeps your adversary from interfering with what you're trying to do. And if they do find out, it will be too late at that point. So that means that it is extremely important to be able to see your adversaries, your enemies, so that you can know what they're doing, what they're up to, or just being able to see things that might be working against you so that you can catch it and not be caught off guard and stay in the dark and it be too late and you don't have any solution for the issue. So this is the type of issue that we are dealing with in the Black community that we need to be able to see so that we can know and acknowledge that it is there. And then we can come up with a proper plan to be able to overcome it. Because clearly we have not been overcoming it. And again, individual situations don't really matter with this. As a whole, we have not seen much success in this area. So, are you ready to learn what the problem is and what the solution is? If you're ready, then I'm going to play a clip. This clip is going to be from Dr. Umar and something that he said in one of his interviews, right? I'm gonna see if you can catch it. I'm gonna see if you can catch what the actual issue is. And then I'm gonna explain what it is, and we're gonna look at some more data. We're gonna look at some other information, some things that were said from even Katt Williams and a few other individuals. We're gonna get some insight from some people that were, living around the time of segregation and integration. We're gonna look at quite a few different things to try to see what might be going on. And then we're going to look at what God had to say about it, because of course, at the end of the day, while most people don't use him as practically as they should in the Bible, as practically as they should, then, we're going to see some practical ways as to some solutions based on what we're about to find out here. But first, let's go ahead and take a look at this clip.
Not in the community making those boys the men they need to be. Do you see that? And she don't get a Pookie if you didn't allow a Pookie.
But she got an Eli. She ain't come to Eli. She went through Pookie. And that's what we're trying to say.
She wouldn't have had a Pookie if we didn't allow one.
Hard in my life.
She wouldn't have had a Pookie if we didn't allow one.
Dr. Umar.
We are supposed to make them raise the boys.
Right. We as men is holding other men accountable for the same thing that you're talking about right now.
What are we doing for the young brothers in the street?
So what you mean, mentoring them? Now, I mean, he's a great father.
I ain't talking about that's individual. That's good. But that's individualism.
Yeah.
What are we doing collectively as men to change the trajectory for Black boys in the streets right now? Nothing.
We're being
but
a voice.
fucking shit.
I mean, you can take
It's
it.
not going to get better unless we put hands on deck. The reason the athletes and the rappers are the role models is the professional Black men moved out the hood. Where the dentist at? He ain't in the Black community no more. Where the lawyer at? Where the business owner at? Where your city council person at? We abandoned Black boys, and then we blame Black men for poor choices in mates that they should not even have to mate if we did a better job raising our boys the right way. At the end of the day, if I'm gonna call myself a man, the ultimate responsibility for reconstruction of the Black community rests with me. Yes, they have a role. Yes, they have responsibility. But as a man, as a leader, to say I can't fix this shit unless she changes, that's not the definition of a man.
I think we're on two different accords. I don't think we're saying that. What I'm saying is I'm capable of being that leader, that provider. I've worked hard in my life. You get what I'm saying? I should not have to.
You still go back to individualism.
But I only feel like we tell Black men that we have to now deal with masculine women with children.
Why is she masculine? Because she had to raise the kids alone. Not one woman,
So
brother.
you mean to tell me
a whole community.
So you mean to tell me the only woman I can look forward in my life is a masculine woman that has kids by other men?
No.
That's what I have to look forward to?
But I'm telling you, mistakes made by Black men systemically gave rise to the conditions that allowed her to be masculine and made her end up with a man that you consider to be less than what he should be. And I'm telling you, Black men are responsible for her being masculine because we have not helped her raise them children. And when I say help them raise them children, I don't mean you as the stepdad.
No, yeah.
I mean you as an active member in the community where we go to every single parent Black mother and say, how many sons you got? Two? How many sons you got? Two? Well, guess what? That's your son's big brother. That's your son's big brother. He taking them to school. He doing the homework. He gonna spend a couple hours with them every Saturday. He got his own kids too, but he gonna make time for you. She got masculine because she had to become masculine in order to deal with the rape, the abuse, the domestic violence, the disappointments that men had in her life, and also raising those kids and have to take care of herself all at the same time. The Black woman has been the be-all, in-all in our community for half of a century, and now we want to turn around and say because she didn't do it perfectly enough or remain feminine enough where she had to absorb our responsibilities plus her own, that's insensitive and disingenuous.
I don't believe.
Yeah, I can.
I mean, I guess I do understand what you're saying.
I'm not
and
thinking
you
about
have
that
yet
yet to tell me something that we've done systemically to combat that.
Because
Because you keep saying me and her. I don't care about me and her.
There's plenty of
Women and men.
Mhm.
Women and men as a group in the
Right.
community. You understand?
Right.
We gave birth to that. 2/3 of our kids are being raised by the women.
Mhm.
And like I said, when I say being raised, I'm not saying it needs to be a father. I would like a father in that house.
Yeah.
But I know it's not enough of us to go around.
Yeah.
We are not even being accountable to the boys in the hood. And we're complaining about the women. I'm arguing with women who are making babies with the irresponsible men that we didn't raise correctly. That's bullshit.
All right.
That's wimp-ass weak man shit. Take responsibility for our shit. Stop scapegoating them.
Yeah, I could agree. I could agree to that.
All I'm saying is look at all we can be doing better, man.
Oh,
Half the black boys in the 4th grade can't read. What black men doing about that systemically?
Not enough.
I know what I'm doing about it. I'm going to school for it, 2 of them.
Mhm.
But systemically, as black men, what are we doing about that? Nothing. Black boys are the most unemployed teenager in America. What black men doing about that?
Not
See, the funky and
not
red
as
you
much.
kept talking about.
Mhm.
We letting them raise right before our eyes, and then we want to criticize stuff for ending up with one when we should have made sure there were none.
Listen, we all got choices. Just like if I choose to live a lifestyle
Dealing
that
with individualism. I can't
that's
deal with
part
that.
of choices.
No, it's not. We have to deal with this systemically. He brought up a question earlier, and he said, did we make these problems on our own, or was there some systemics involved? It was systemics.
Okay.
In 1970, they shut down the factories. They took out the industrial building jobs. 1980, dropped off the crack and the AIDS. 1990, the Bill Clinton crime bill. There's systemic factors at play. You totally divorce your analysis from any systemic factors at all. You ain't mentioned one. You even talking about her and Buki and Raymond with the kids. You ain't said shit about the systemics. That's exactly what white folks want you to do. This is what white folks want you to do.
I'm saying that
What I've done to your women is scapegoat her. Because that's what she's doing to you. She's ignoring what the system did to you. And she's going to scapegoat you.
And
We're both goating each other.
Okay. That's fair.
Your analysis is feeding the gender war. It's not solving it.
Listen,
I don't mind us holding the
Right.
women accountable. I don't mind us holding the men accountable.
Right.
Yeah. But when we going to hold the system accountable as well.
That's fair.
And if we're going to hold the system accountable, that also means we got to make our own systems too. Black men have not been manly in quite some time when it comes to raising boys.
How would you suggest that black men take on the role of leadership
Especially when there's an attack on
Yeah.
black masculinity.
without women willing to listen to us? You get what I'm saying? How do we prove our worth or take back the
Take care
leadership
of the boys. You want the women back? Take care of these damn boys. They running the hood, killing people at will, flunking out of school, following the lead of the gangster rappers. There's a whole bunch of stuff we can do
Mm-hmm.
that ain't got nothing to do with the women, boys and men. Do you understand? Deal with the boys and the men. Leave her out of it and go straight to the boys. And you'll get her respect back. Give them jobs, give them education, give them training, give them your time. They not getting none of that from black men. We don't give a shit about black boys. And then we get mad at her for ending up with one later in life. It's ridiculous.
Not, like I said,
Create the
we
product and get mad for her for ending up consuming the product.
she could consume whatever she wants. I'm just saying, as a black man,
It's not about her consuming whatever she wants, brother, because if we're trying to fix the black community, everybody and everything matters. It's
And that's
not individual.
understandable.
You're an
But what-
individualist. You're not thinking as a community. Your whole analysis is based on me and her. Step out of that shit. This
Mhm.
is systems at play. You understand?
Right.
Multiple black men screwed up.
Mhm.
Multiple black women screwed up. You understand me?
Mhm.
Look at the systemic nature and say, what system do we need to create as black men to prevent the Pookie and Ray Ray from coming into existence?
or I, as a black man, can just look for a woman that is healed, that is leading in her femininity, that doesn't have a child by another
But
woman.
that doesn't solve community problems. We're talking about community solutions. That's individualism.
Okay, so did you catch it? So what Dr. Umar kept mentioning, even though the young men weren't really getting it, what he was saying was that individualism is really the problem that is leading us to not really fix the problems in the community that are really plaguing us. And it's not letting us fix the community as a whole because of how we're attacking it. And because, like, as you could see in that clip, he couldn't even see that his whole line of thinking was dealing with individualism. And let's talk about individualism so we can get a better understanding of what this enemy of the community is, and we can see what we need to do about it, right? So, individualism in society has a focus on the rights and needs of individuals, which is a good thing. Independence and personal resilience are valued attributes in individualism. Again, a good thing. In individualist societies, people are expected to be self reliant and independent. Once again, something good. So we can see that there are some good traits within individualism. But let's continue. So let's look at individualism versus collectivism or more community thinking. Just think of collectivism as that. Individualism is focused on the individual, whereas collectivism is focused on the group. From a individualist perspective, one should look within themselves for solutions to fix their problems. Like the young man was saying, I can just uh, make sure I'm doing what I need to do, and make sure I find a woman that's doing the right thing, doing what she need to do. So that's what that's geared towards, and of course, that's what we all want to do anyway. Nothing wrong with that. But from a collectivist perspective, one may feel encouraged to look to others, such as family. So, with that is basically you're not just going to only rely on yourself. You have family or friends that you can go to. You're thinking about the whole community as resources to fix and solve some of the problems that you might have. In collectivism, compromise for the good of the group is encouraged, which is a good trait. Individualism in individualism, one is encouraged to think of their own needs. Now, this is where it starts getting a little bit bad. Collectivism is the belief that a person should live according to the needs of the group, while individualism is the belief that a person should live according to their own needs, not the needs of others. Now, in some instances, that might be good to, be focused on what you need in your family, if you have a family, might need. But there are some instances where, and there are some instances where focusing on the needs of the group can be a negative thing. But we need to think of it more so from the perspective of um, how what we are doing to this day is going to affect the community. Like Dr. Umar was telling them, what you do uh, and what's things we're doing now in the community are going to affect the products that it produces that end up coming to us and our children later. As I mentioned, the product that our children are going to have within the dating market when they get older. Now, individualism instills the thought that it is the individual's fault if they aren't successful. So this is another downside of it because you might think of it as good because individualism is something that is pushed heavily here in America. And if an individual has the opportunity to see success and they don't, then pretty much the thinking is it's their fault. And a lot of people will look at you crazy, like you have four eyes or something like that. Not four eyes, like you got a toe on your forehead or something like that. If you just hint at saying that maybe there's a systemic thing happening here that's causing people to not be successful because everybody looks at it like, okay, if I can see success, you can see success. Um, so that's just something to think about. Now, this helps to support things like, institutional racism, because it basically hides the fact that this is happening within blacks and within the black community. So, uh, because everybody is not looking at this as what it is and looking at the problems that it's causing, it's basically hidden because everybody thinks that it's not a thing because you should be able to determine your own success. Um, and it points the finger away from, maybe any agendas that might be out there behind these systemic things that are causing these problems within the black community. And it aims the finger, away something like, maybe a white supremacist agenda that might be happening and making certain things happen or systemically making things happen. And it points the finger back at the individual to say, okay, it's not a system, it's you. Why aren't you doing what you need to do? Right. And in some instances, that might seem very fair to say something like that. So basically, we have to look at just a little bit deeper just to get better understanding of what we're dealing with here and the true existence of these systems, which I know some of you, I don't have to tell that these systems are still in place to this day, and they still exist. But let's look at something that's a little bit outside of what you might normally go to see if something like this is actually present and in existence, to kind of see that it is a systemic thing. So I want to point your attention to something called the Opportunity Atlas. It was something that was created in 2018 by I think two different colleges, some students at two different colleges working together on this. And what their goal was to try to see if they could accurately determine a person's outcomes based off of, their upbringing, specifically like where they were born. So in this Opportunity Atlas, and I'm going to pull it up, you can basically go and put your zip code in, and you can see by the any child born in that zip code what their income is likely to be by the time they're age 35, right? So we're gonna be able to find that out here. And yeah, there were students at Harvard and Brown University that came up and created this using data from the Census Bureau, and I believe a few other sources. So what I did was I put in my information on the zip code I was born, which was in New Orleans. I put in the income of my parents, which was low income, and black was of course, my race, and then male. So you put in that information. Then it zooms in on, that zip code and gives you information. You can see it's color coded as far as what uh, income bracket you should be in by the time you're age 35 based off these factors. Um, and this is information that they plugged in from tracking people that came from these zip codes that were either male or female, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, that their parents had high, middle, or uh, low income, and how they were able to, fare by the time they got 35. So for my particular zip code, it was about 25,000 per year. So that's what they determined I should be making by the time I hit age 35. Now, I've already, hit that mark, age 35, that is, and I've been able to successfully get past that 25K in a year way before now. But I do understand that I was one of the lucky few people that were able to, break the mold and not really uh, fall victim to this. But I do know that from times that I've went back home to visit, I've seen, past friends or just people from the neighborhood, or people around the city that are, they are more than likely still making this amount of money, even in our adult ages. And these are people that grew up with me, not too far or in the same zip code. So I can see the truth and accuracy of this information. And I think actually, if I zoom into my block, it was like 21,000 for my block specifically. But as a whole, in this zip code is 25,000. But I could see how this is very accurate, and that how I'm one of the lucky few to be able to break past the mindset that usually holds most of us back. And it used to hold me back as well until I was able to see differently. But I, because I grew up in that environment, I know that there is a certain tunnel vision that you have to only be able to see certain things, to only be open to certain things, only to be open to certain ways of thinking that's kind of formed by what you're around, um, and what you see around you, the levels of success that you see around you. I fell victim and I was a part of that mindset. And like I said, I was able to step out of it and to see different outcomes. But it's too easy for me to see how it is easy to predict um, something like a person's income based off of where they were raised at. So I'll show you this to say that if a person can track information like this accurately, just going off of simple things like what your race is, if you're male or female, and the income of your parents, and where you were born, it is very telling to the fact that there might be some systems in place that are capable of uh, producing the same result, as long as, you know, everything plays out how the system is designed it to play out. So, if individual effort is the only thing that determines success or failure, then it should not there should not be able to be a system like this that can tell so accurately how much income you're likely to make. If systemics don't play a factor and only your individual drive is the determining factor, then this should not be able to happen. With them to be so accurate as well. If I create this type of environment, I can produce the same result every time. So why don't I just put my adversaries in there, and then every time they continue to be born into this system in this area, I can make sure that they come out just how I want them to come out. It's almost like a person or a group of people might have actually sat and thought that out and then executed on something like that. I mean, that's what I'm gathering from what I'm looking at and, what I've researched for what we're talking about. Now, what would be a driving, motivating factor for a group of people to want to do something like this? Well, if you were, because we're talking about the Black community here, if you were oppressing people and you saw that every time that you were, well, during the time that you're oppressing this group of people in totality, basically, eventually little leaders pop up and then they start fighting back against you. And you can take out their leaders, no problem, but, it's still gonna be more people to pop up. The tension is gonna continue to build. They're gonna keep wanting to fight back, and then, that's not an efficient way of doing things, right? So, why not give them some freedom, right? And then make them feel like they can go and be successful and be free. And then, just kind of pick and choose the people that you want to put in the public eye that looks like them so that they can see, hey, this person has success. Hey, this person has success. So if these people can see success, surely you can as well. And at the same time, making sure that you are selective about who you put um, in that success and controlling what paths lead to success and what paths you want to put on display that lead to success, rappers, actors, sports players, you know, then you can kind of control what pathways they want to take and make sure that they're only seeing success or mostly desiring to see success in those different areas, while they might still choose some other areas outside of that, right? And then because they're seeing success and they feel free, there's no pressure building up there. There's no need for a leader to pop up because you're not being oppressed anymore. You have freedom and you are in control of your own individual success. So what would a leader, want to pop up for? And if they do, why would you want to get behind them? Because you're free and you can see success, based off of your own personal individual effort. So, that's just kind of what I can see from looking at this, right? But you tell me what you think, of course. Now that sounds like a lot of red herring talk, a lot of smoke screens. Because of course you're gonna be distracted with all of the new things that you can do now that you're free and going down the pathway of seeing success. And looking at people on TV and seeing them get success and focused on the things that they're focused on, like what the rappers show on TV and all of that stuff. And then while all this is happening, they're distracted, they're feeling free, they're feeling comfortable. Then you can go in and you can do things that kind of, destroy the Black family. As I talked before about the welfare programs, which, promoted not having a husband in the home, and then interracial marriage being no longer illegal and going in different directions. The doors being opened up to desegregation, leading to spending money outside the community. And then, God forbid, drugs get put into the community as well. That can really shake things up while, everybody's focused on these red herrings and smoke screens that are going on, with them not even being aware that these things are happening and not even knowing what's going on, what's really going on, the concealed intentions. So, let's take a look at what Cat Williams had to say when he was with Willie D. Is it Willie D? Yeah, when he was with Willie D. Let's see what he had to say about this very same thing, so that you can kind of see how people's intentions might be geared towards trying to do something like this.
If you had the ability to control the Black people on this planet, there isn't anything that you couldn't take, dismantle, destroy, or interrupt if you could mobilize Black people. And so part of the Opps agenda, a part of their modus operandi, is to find out which one of you niggas is a potential leader. And if you are, then we begin a work of progress on your life, which will make people get off of that. It's a part of it. As much as in any defense, you're trying to figure out which way this dude is likely to go so I can rip that ball. It's the same.
Yeah. Farrakhan is a polarizing individual. A lot of people
Yes.
really, I do believe, don't really understand him. I think that there are people who get the message. This is what frightens them, is because they know, as you alluded to, they know what he's capable of doing. You know, uniting Black people and guiding and leading Black people in the right way.
There's not been a successful one of those yet. So just like if you're a rapper, any rapper can get hit. Yeah, we can go through 300 years of history and look for all the Black people that fit the description you just said. They never make it.
Yeah. Which is why I believe that they should stop trying to make it. I really do believe that, it's each one reach one, teach one, but the leadership is in yourself. Like, all of us are capable. Well, not all of us, but many of us are capable of being a leader. Like, instead of sitting around just waiting on one person to be that leader, how about...
Well said. Well
Yeah.
said. But in real time, being the leader of yourself gets you nothing. The people demand to be led regardless. There's not 13 shepherds and all these sheep. Why? Because it's unnecessary. Just one. Just one that has the connection with the sheep, which allows the sheep who has a brain about that small to be able to just focus on eating grass and not worry about falling off a cliff. We have the desire as humans to be led. We want to be led into battle. We want to be led into the football game. This is all because this is how we are wired. The cheerleaders and the pomp and circumstance, that goes back to the times of first humanity, because we do need that.
Yeah. Well, you're talking about a myriad of leaders. You're not just talking about a single individual.
Right.
And I see a lot of people just be sitting back waiting on a Messiah. They're waiting on that one person.
But they are too, though.
Who's that?
The other side is far more diligent about looking for that Messiah than we are, because they know where to look. You probably wonder, why do white people pay so much attention to Black people if they don't like them? You would think if you didn't like something, why would you be paying attention to it? I don't pay attention to things I don't like.
What's the answer?
The answer is the liar knows what lie he told. You see what I'm saying? So even if I made it deceitful and I made you think that the answer is over here, but the answer is really over here, I'm still going to be looking over here. Me, the one that tricked, because I know this is the right answer. Black people have lost their identity, but our oppressors have not lost our identity.
Now, if you were listening and you were able to really catch what Katt was saying right there, he said a few things. One being that, who is a leader of himself is a leader of nothing. So it can't just be you doing things yourself and you leading yourself to do the right thing for the community as a whole. But also, if you notice there, he said that when a person that doesn't like you shouldn't be paying attention to you that much anyway. But if they are paying attention to you and they know they told you one thing even though they told you one thing that may not be true, and they want you to focus on that red herring smokescreen over here, they're going to be focused on what is the actual truth. And they're going to be looking to see when you move towards the truth or when that truth pops up, because that's what they want to catch. And they were talking about a Messiah. So that I know some of you guys may or may not like Katt based off of the things that he's done recently, but he definitely has some insight onto some things at a higher level corporately in, America, the world, or whatever, than some of us have been able to reach. So he definitely knows something going on behind the scenes. But I would just say that, um, you know, as he mentioned, they're gonna be looking at they're gonna send you over here and have you looking over here, but they're gonna be looking at whatever it is. So as soon as you do something that is going to align with something that would lead you towards the right direction, um, that's when they're going to jump on you or jump on it to make sure that they're on top of it. So, this is just kind of showing that it is possible that there is some measures of control put out there to keep us focused on one thing while um, we should be focused on something else. And we have to look for those spikes in attention, which mobilize the groups of people that might have put these systems in place, because that's going to tell us when we're actually moving in the right direction. And we're going to see some examples of what that right direction is as we continue to go along with this video. But just keep in mind too that he mentioned a Messiah, that this group of people would know where to look for the Messiah. Um, and I hear a lot of people say that you shouldn't be looking for nobody to come and save you, especially not no Messiah from the Bible. But clearly there's some indications that maybe there is some truth to a Messiah from the Bible coming, because there's some truth of information that they don't that people don't focus on that they should be focused on, is what I'll say there. But we'll get into that as we continue. So now, looking at that information, it should be obvious from that and some of the things that we're talking about here that, and just looking at real life, people getting shot in the street by the police, black men, and, black women, and other things that have gone on and transpired over the past years. Racism hasn't gone anywhere. It's still there. It's still present. But you have to understand, while everybody that is in the black community wants that to stop because it affects all of us, any one of us can feel it or catch it at any point in time. If you do want to stop it, you have to realize that it is not just affecting us on an individual level. That is the smokescreen. We have to know that it is affecting us as a collective. So we have to do things as a collective in order to counteract it. Otherwise, we're just throwing rocks at, a, a big iron building, and it's not going to do anything to help move the issue forward. Um, you know, uh, Marching, I'm sorry, isn't going to really do it, because while you may say it did some things in the time around the 60s, but at the end of the day, ultimately a person that has their foot on your neck, if they know they have their foot on your neck and they can control things and they have all the power, I don't see a march being the determining factor in them deciding, oh, well, I don't need power anymore. I don't need control anymore. I'm just giving it up because I saw y'all marching. I don't really think that that would be the thing that would, really stop some of the issues that we're having from continuing to go on and removing that foot from our neck. So I'm going to show you something about this individualism just a little bit deeper. First off, you need to be aware that individualism is something that is here in America, if you haven't already got the picture, but it's spreading, and it has spread a lot around the world. It was a study that showed that it has increased by 12% worldwide, individualism that is, since 1960. Now, again, 1960 is that year where a whole lot of things happened that started making things go south for the black community. But in that same year, there was it started a increase of 12% around the world of individualism, and that study went till about I think it was 2011. So basically, you can see that it has been a growing thing worldwide. Now, there was a study done on collectivism versus individualism. And I'm bringing this up so that you can see how this type of thinking actually affects the thinking of our children. Now, this study was done on African American students and European American students. It was done with 302 students from the grades 1 to 5th, and it was done between 2011 and 2012, right? So they wanted to see how individualism and collectivism affected African American students and European American students. So let's take a look, and it's very interesting how this affected the children and which group of children had more collectivist and individualistic values, right? So results showed that European American children endorsed less individualistic values than African American children. That okay. I didn't expect that. Now, however, African American and European children did not, European American children did not significantly differ in their reports of collectivist values as measured in this study. So that shows you that a child can possess both, or anybody can possess both values, but it's a matter of which one outweighs the other as far as the amount of values under one way of thinking that you might have. And it said African American children had more individualistic values. Now, it also says all the children in the sample with more collectivistic values reported engaging in significantly less delinquent problem behaviors. So those children with more collectivist values had less delinquent behaviors. Uh, Conversely, children with high individualistic orientation reported less pro-social behavior, so they did not have good social behavior. They had increased conduct problems and experimenting with drugs and alcohol and vandalism and theft. So the children with the highest individualistic orientation was the African American children, and they had more behavior problems and eventually started experimenting with drugs, alcohol, vandalism, and theft. So it clearly affects in a great way the thoughts of our children. And if these were the values of the children, that means that the parents were teaching this or practicing these things in the household as far as individualism versus collectivism, right? So this is again giving us clues as to what is something beneficial and what is something that's not. All right. So children with individualistic cultural orientation may be over focused on themselves. So this individualism helps them to focus on themselves a little bit too much and probably too early. And material gain, whereas and also focused on material gain too much. Whereas collectivistic children may possess more empathy, which is something that's valuable in all walks of life, and awareness of how their actions affected others. So those that were more collectivistic actually cared about and were empathetic towards how their actions affected other people. So, and some of the questions that they asked to kind of get a gauge of what was valued within individualistic and collectivistic children were, should you value a adult or a elder, basically? Should you give them value or respect just because they are an adult or an elder? And individualistic children scored low in that area and collectivist score high. Now when it comes to should you give somebody respect based off of the amount of money that they have, individualistic children were higher in that area, collectivists were low in that area. So it even esteemed respect that you give to a person based off of the amount of money they have, and not just the fact that they're a parent or they're an adult and you should just show them respect. And there were some other questions too that dealt with materialistic things and seeing success and being taught how to be competitive and successful, which were more higher on the individualistic side, which those are actually, good to want to know how to be competitive. But I think children developing individualistic practices very early on because that's the sensitive ages where you're kind of setting your foundation before or without learning enough about supporting your community and how your actions affect your community, which will also teach you how your actions affect other people. I think learning that too early can lead to some of these problematic things that come from worrying about yourself more than caring about how what you do affects others. So just something to note and to keep in mind. So let's talk about how individualism causes these problems in the community, in the Black community. Um, and again, individualism is basically focused on what I need is more important than what the community needs. Just keep that in mind as we're talking about some of these problems and solutions, which we're about to do right now. So let's go back to the economics, right? So one big problem is that we don't spend money in our own communities enough as far as the Black community. So according to the University of Georgia's Selig Center for Economic Growth in Modern Times, money circulates 1 time within the African American community, compared to more than 6 times in the Latino community, 9 times in the Asian community, and an unlimited amount of times within the white community. So this shows us that money only goes around 1 time. And, with the circulation of money in the community, it's like I earned this money. Now I go spend this money to get some uh, beard products from a Black owned company. Then that Black owned company receive money from the community, and they go and they hire employees and pay them. And let's say they hire Black people from the community. So now more Black people in the community are receiving those dollars. And then, of course, they turn around and they go and be consumers. Let's say they go to the grocery store, they spend that money at a Black owned grocery store. And now the money is circulating within the Black community and within our community. Um, that doesn't happen with us. As soon as we get the money, basically, because it said 1 time at most, it's going to somebody else's community, to an Asian community, maybe for hair products or to get your nails done. Or, maybe you're going to a restaurant. Or, if you go to any of the mainstream stores or anything like that, that's going to be where you're going to be. Like, Walmart, you're putting money into the white community and it said there an unlimited amount of times. And, most of the biggest name places are owned, the majority of them are owned in the white community. So that makes sense. So also this says, and this is a letter from an attorney that was that's in Detroit, and he was writing a report on how the Black Bottom area in Detroit used to be similar to Black Wall Street, and it changed drastically. And things and practices that actually helped it to thrive back in the day that they could try to implement again. So this is where this information is coming from. So the Black Wall Street, until it was destroyed by white supremacists in 1921, lives there were lost. Over 610,000 Black people lost their homes. Prior to June 1, 1921, it is said that the dollar circulated 36 to 100 times in the Greenwood district, which is Black Wall Street. A single dollar might have stayed in Tulsa for almost a year before leaving the Black community. It is safe to assume that the dollar circulated within the Black Bottom area of Detroit in a similar fashion during this time of segregation. So notice there that during the time of segregation, when we were segregated and off to ourselves, this is when that area in Detroit, Black Bottom, was thriving, as well as when Black Wall Street was thriving with segregation. So, it's funny that Black Wall Street was able to prosper during segregation. While the Black community was just like calmly to themselves, doing their own thing, not trying to hurt anybody, right? They just minding their own business and just doing business with each other. Yet as soon as those white supremacist people saw what they were doing, it, made them want to come and attack and shut it down. Almost like what Katt was talking about, when what's the right solution and you're the person that's causing the problem, you're going to keep your eye on that right solution. And as soon as you see the people that you don't want to be successful engaging in activities that's going to actually lead them in the right direction and send them off to a good place, a good prosperous place, then you have to jump in and shut it down, because that's why you're keeping your eye on them. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the information about Black Wall Street. So it was the most prosperous Black-owned district in 1921. Now, this is something that most people don't know about Black Wall Street. It was rebuilt by the Black community in 1925, so just like 4 years after it got burned down. And of course, they had some opposition in doing that, but that's history that many people still are unaware of, said Michelle Brown Boudreaux from the Greenwood Cultural Center Program Coordinator. I'm sorry, she was the program coordinator. Now, the Greenwood Cultural Center says that by 1942, the district had 250 businesses, exceeding the number of businesses before the massacre, and this is still during segregation. And unfortunately, Black Wall Street faced various hardships after rebuilding. Dr. Hill says urban renewal, or basically, as you'll see, um, desegregation, crippled the Greenwood district's economy, forcing many businesses to relocate or even close between the 1960s and 70s, which was during desegregation. So basically, like I said, it was after desegregation when all this stuff started happening, and then blacks started to integrate themselves after desegregation happened. They started to integrate themselves into white society, and integration was never really the goal of a lot of the black people back then, according to some of them. So let's take a look at this clip so you can see what I'm talking about. This interview of somebody that was actually in doing some activism during that time.
Many of us who exercised leadership in the civil rights movement in the early and mid 60s, integration was never our goal. We never saw integration as a solution to the problems. We were seeking desegregation. And I think confusion on that point has continued to erode the collective self-confidence of the black community today. Just a very confusion. You see, I fought against de jure segregation. That is, when someone absolutely forbid me to go into a restaurant or live in a given housing complex, I was just restricted by law. I remember when I was discharged from the military, coming home in 1958 and standing in Florida, only person at a ticket window, and have the man stop and wait on a white person. He waited on 10 white people while I was standing there. In the meantime, I almost missed a train and couldn't check my bags. That's what I fought against, the indignity of America's apartheid system. So integration was never an issue for me or for many others who had this burning desire to change things, primarily because of my early experience as someone growing up in the South and then being sort of growing up in the North and then dropped in the South in the military, facing raw segregation. I was very bitter from that experience. For 3 years after my discharge in the military, I remember my heart racing every time a red light would flash in my rearview mirror, because I was arrested 3 times and imprisoned in local jails 3 times because of my activism in the South. And so those early memories really motivated me to do something about it.
So as you can see there, he really was more so focused on having desegregation so that he didn't have to deal with the indignities, as he called it, that would happen as a result of them being segregated and being treated unfairly, which is, fair. And I can definitely understand that. But if they weren't really trying to integrate, that wasn't really the goal, even though that's what ultimately happened once those pathways opened up for people to go down to see success. Now, what happened to the black community after desegregation? Let's just take a look at some of the things that actually happened once desegregation happened and integration started to happen, because a lot of people don't really pay note to or have looked at anything that says what really went down. So this is 50 years after the Kerner Commission. Now, the Kerner Commission is basically a study that was done to see what the state was of, black people during the time around 1968, and, how they ranked. More specifically, they say here, the National Advisory Commission on Civil Disorders, better known as the Kerner Commission, delivered a report to President Johnson examining the causes of civil unrest in African American communities, right? So the Kerner Commission report pulled together a comprehensive array of data to assess the specific economic and social inequities confronting African Americans in 1968. So here are some of what they found. All right. And this report right here that we're about to read actually took the current report and its information and looked to see, how we have fared about 50 years since then to see if the Black community has been better as a whole since, 1968 desegregation, our leaders, being taken out, our activists being taken out at that time, and, just how much has it benefited us. Now, some of what I saw said that the education did improve, right? So more than 90% of younger African Americans ages 25 to 29 have graduated from high school compared to just over half in 1968. So more have been graduated from high school and also more have been graduating from college as well. But compared to our white counterparts, basically, they're still twice as more likely to have a college degree, but education did increase. So we were getting more educated. Also, income did increase. Uh, we were earning more than what we had prior to. But like in 1968, compared to now, we are actually earning more than what we did back then. And this was released in 2017. But we still are behind other groups of people, more specifically from this study, talking about whites, people in the white community. It says white workers make only 82.5 cents on every dollar earned by white workers. And African Americans are 2.5 times more likely to be in poverty as whites. And the median white family has almost 10 times as much wealth as a Black median family. So even though we have seen an increase in income, we still don't compare to them as far as income. And of course, that lowered poverty because we were able to see more income. But as far as wealth, we still don't have anywhere near as much wealth. That their wealth actually increased from that time to this time. And ours did increase, but it still pales in comparison to the increase they were able to see during that same time frame. And of course, when we look at things like unemployment rate, in 2017, Black unemployment rate was 7.5%, up from 6.7% in 1978. And it is still roughly twice the white unemployment rate. In 2015, the Black home ownership rate was just over 40%, which has remained unchanged. So we aren't getting more homes since then. It's been about the same. The unemployment rate did go up some. And also, as far as what was it? Okay. And the share of African Americans in prison or jail almost tripled between 1968 and 2016, and is currently more than 6 times the white incarceration rate. So incarceration increased and is still far more than what you might see in the white community. So we did fare well in the increase in education and income, but if you have income and it's not translating over into wealth, it's not passing on from generation to generation. And having money and not having wealth, in this day and age, the difference in that and how much more beneficial it is to have wealth because you can make a lot of money and spend it all within the same month and basically still be paycheck to paycheck, no matter how much you earn. So income is not a determination of success. Wealth is a determination of success, even though you can live a better quality of life with more income. So I want to talk about how, from what we're looking at, you can see that integration kind of steered us to focus on spending more money, right, in more places on more mainstream things and not really caring about spending money with each other, hiring each other, and building businesses in our own communities. And I just wanted you to listen to what Dr. Umar said about how other groups actually handle this area of how they spend their money within their own communities and hire their own and whatnot. So as he mentioned there, you can see that uh, a lot of other communities, other groups of people come to America and they start businesses and they put their family into those businesses, other people that look like them into those businesses, and they earn income, they build up wealth, they spread that wealth around their families and their people, and then they prosper from it. And you can see statistically that they are definitely, as a people, prospering from it. And we are one of the only groups of people that's not really doing that, and we aren't prospering as much as they are as a result of it, because we would rather go and spend our money elsewhere and let it circulate in other communities versus our own, which is really sad to see. But I want to speak on something now from the Bible, right? So this is there's a incident where God's people, they basically did something similar to what we just described here, what we're doing, and I want to share that with you so you can kind of see the same thing. So in Second Maccabees 4:15, it says that what their ancestors had regarded as honors, they despised. What the Greeks esteemed as glory, they prized highly. So, for this reason, they found themselves in serious trouble. The very people whose manner of life they emulated and whom they desired to imitate in everything became their enemies and oppressors. Wow. So the ancient Israelites basically they stopped doing what their ancestors used to do, what their people used to do. They didn't hold those things highly anymore. And then they just started doing what the people around them doing, the Greeks, which was a different group of people. They were not the same nationality. So they started wanting to do everything that they did, have everything that they had, and then those same people that they wanted to imitate became their enemies and their oppressors. Now, that sounds eerily similar. So in Romans 12:2, it also says, stop imitating the ideals and opinions of the culture around you, but be inwardly transformed by the Holy Spirit through a total reformation of how you think. Didn't even say how you spend money. It said how you think, because how you think determines what you're going to do. And like they mentioned in the video with Dr. Umar on the Breakfast Club, they were talking about those status symbols that even though the Black community doesn't earn as much as the white community, we still spend more money than they do on Mercedes and other status symbols, trying to get what the culture around us says is of value. And if you have it, you should be of value, or you will feel like you are of value. You have to change your thinking, which that thinking is, again, somewhat of inferiority. And you feel like you have to have those things to be to not be inferior. So change the way that you think. And it says this will empower you to discern God's will as you live a beautiful life, satisfying and perfect in his eyes, which should be our ultimate aim anyway. Um, but let's continue on. Now, it's important to also know that God's chosen people, the Israelites, he gave them laws and instructions to follow, right? And if you look at those laws and instructions that God gave them to follow, they show how if you do some of the things that God mentioned to do or told them to do, you can see how you can see more success versus trying to just do what everybody around you is doing. First, I would take a look at First Thessalonians. I think I said that right. 4:11-12. And that ye study to be quiet and to do your own business, have your own business, and to work with your hands or work with your hands. And we command, as we commanded you, that ye may walk honestly toward them that are without, and that ye may have lack of nothing. So starting your own business, being quiet, doing your own business, doing your own thing, working with your hands. Um, Doing these things, he wants you to do so that you can uh, be without nothing and lack without nothing, and you may be able to give to those that are without. Now, imagine if we were all thriving like that, and we had family members or friends that we knew that were on hard times, we can give to them because we are not lacking anything. A lot of times we can't give it because we ain't got it, and it's because of how we think and how we spend and how we act. But this is how they were told to act within their community. Also, Leviticus 19:13. It says, do not defraud or rob your neighbor. Do not make your hired workers wait until the next day to receive their pay. So it's saying, pay your workers when they're due. So, some of these things about I can't do business with black people, or I don't want to work for a black person because of this or that. These laws that God gave his people is telling them how they have to operate, basically. And you can see the benefit in something like that. Leviticus 25:14. When you make an agreement with your neighbor to buy or sell property, you must not take advantage of each other. I mean, if you knew that you didn't have to do that because it's a law and the person that you're dealing with is going to have to, abide by this law and do the right thing by you, and you're supposed to do the right thing by them, it lowers the chances of you having bad interactions because you know that it's required of you. by God nonetheless. Deuteronomy 23:19. Do not charge interest on the loans you make to a fellow Israelite, whether you loan money or food or anything else. So if you loan something to somebody within a community, don't charge them interest. Just make them pay back what you gave them. Whether it's money, food, or anything else. Like imagine us in our community living by those practices and actually adhering to them. You can see that it can be a thriving community and more people will be better off from these types of practices. Now let's take a look at relationships, right? So with relationships and the problems and the solutions, like really, it's too much of us attacking each other, men and women that is, instead of trying to build families with each other. We're too busy trying to attack each other. We're too busy trying to get what we can get from each other. And things like the passport bros, where you need to go to another country, get you a woman of another nationality. Like this is something that they're telling you to do to find love, because basically they're telling you to give up on hope with your own community of people. Divestors, totally. And I have a video that I did about that, not on that specifically, but my first episode, you should check that out. And basically, it's just like you're not gonna find love with black men, black women, so go get you a white man or somebody from another community. But mostly I just see it push more heavily of black women to get a white man. It's like abandon your community. These things are being pushed on us, telling us to abandon our community and go find other people. Like, that's not a genuine way of going to find love, because there are good people within the community. Just because you're running into the negative ones, that might be some stuff that you do need to do internally, that's causing you to run into only bad ones. But those aren't real solutions. And if our goal wasn't, most of our goal is really to have as much sex as we can have, and the commitment part is worried about on the lesser end in women too now. And while there are a lot more women that do want commitment, there are a lot of women out there these days that they don't really care about that. And they will mess around out there with who they want to. And a lot of times that ends up in the babies. And, that causes other problems because, a commitment not being there initially. So, all of that stuff are problems that we are familiar with, but we're basically on both ends, male and female. We're too prideful um, to try to fix our personal issues, and we're too lazy to try to work on and build with and overcome these issues within the person of the opposite sex that we're going to be with, right? So our potential partner, we can't be lazy in regards to wanting to work on that, because that is what's required to ultimately see success. We have to work on ourselves, and we have to be willing to um, work with that potential spouse or partner while they are trying to work on, ironing out some issues that may be there present, um, with, some characteristic traits, some, issues that might have happened in childhood trauma or just from dating. We have to be able to work with each other through that. And when you get married, being able to work through the issues and try everything you can within marriage. We can't be so quick to give up on each other. Um, and stop just trying to get what we want from each other. That's the real thing. You grow up dating, trying to get what you can get out of each other. And maybe you're not even dating. You're just trying to get what you want to get out of the other person. And we can't take that mindset into being married, or we can't think that we're gonna be able to get married and stay married with that type of mindset. And that's something we just really have to get out of in the relationship area. Sad to say. Now, let's kind of talk about our children in the community. So, um, in regards to that, right? Um, I think it's important to kind of hear how our communities were before desegregation, so that we can see just how they looked and operated and get that picture painted for us. So let's take a look at this so that you can see what I'm talking about.
I grew up in South Philadelphia. We didn't realize it was segregated. All we knew is that our neighborhood was all black. And we weren't even that conscious of color, because the people who owned the store down the street were black, the tailor, the restaurant owners, the undertaker, everybody in the neighborhood. And it was a very small street, everybody worked blue collar, essentially. Very close knit neighborhood. Everyone had over 4 children. We played in the streets together. On Saturday morning, our parents came out and the hucksters came around and our parents purchased things. We had to go buy ice because there were no refrigerators then. We had a coal stove, so the younger kids were responsible for uh, putting wood and coal into the stove and keeping it going. And the level of interest in education was just profound. I mean, even to this day, I don't think I've ever had such a positive educational experience than I did in my first 6 years because school was an integral part of the community. We had a black superintendent, black principal, all the teachers were black. Many of them didn't live in the neighborhood either. Contrary to popular belief, they were middle income people who lived elsewhere. But their hearts and their souls were into those kids. I remember that third grade and fourth grade plays were always conducted in the evenings so that parents could attend. And an auditorium that seated maybe 400, 500 people was standing room only for a third and fourth grade play. Up until 1959, 78% of all black families had a man and a woman in them. That's a fact. Teen pregnancy was looked down upon. Sexual activity among kids, everyone bragged about it, no one did it. And but if someone became pregnant, if there was an aunt in the South, they would go there. So that the moral standards and ethical standards for people living in those communities was extremely high. It had little to do with your income. Many of us were poor without realizing that we were poor. During the war years, I thought everyone had one pair of shoes. Today, I have a lot of shoes because of those early experiences. You know, you put cardboard in your shoes when your soles were worn out. You never went to your mother and said, Mom, my shoes need to be replaced or fixed. You just knew that the money wasn't there for that. So you got the thickest piece of cardboard you can find and put it in your shoes. And if it didn't rain, you could last for 2 days. The discipline was in the community. I mean, you didn't speak back to an adult. The thought of an elderly person being disrespected was just unheard of. And teachers were never disrespected. And if you misbehaved, it was glad you would be spanked by a neighbor. And your mother got home or father got home, you were spanked there. And God forbid a teacher should ever have to send for your parents. And they had to take off work. That was it. And so it imposed a kind of discipline. And again, it was a discipline that had little to do with how much money you. There was a sense of comfort, a sense of well-being, a sense of oneness between the school and the community.
Now, just listening to that, you can see just how tight everybody was, just how the community functioned seamlessly. Um, People were there to help each other out, and they were just really close and tight knit, and they would help each other out. It wasn't a "I'm all in it for myself" type of mentality back then. And in these days, it's really hard to see all of the good examples of people in the community because we have that mindset that as soon as we get some money, we're going to move out of the black neighborhood and we're going to finally make it and we're going to, be in a better place now. So all of the good professional examples that should be there in the community to help keep this cohesive idea of good people being in the community, they're all gone. And then, the black kids growing up in the community don't have a lot of examples that they could look up to see and aspire to be outside of what they see on the TV, because now those examples aren't there present in front of them. So now they have to go to the TV to kind of see who is a black person, what are they doing, what are the successful ones doing, and then determining what they should do based off of that. Especially if you have two busy working parents and then, no one's at home to really guide them. All they have is the TV to kind of guide them on what they should do, and they start making decisions very early on in their head. And listen to this video just to see So as you can see from that, children as early as 4 start developing an understanding of the racial hierarchy and who gets respect and who doesn't. And they have an idea of what they like and what they don't like based off of what society looks at and views as good, and that's determined by what they put in front of you and tell you what is good. And I know as adults, you might have a filter on that, but children don't, especially as young as 4. They're just receiving and absorbing everything that they see, and they are accepting and weaving in these foundational beliefs and thoughts that are gonna go with them unless they are taught or told differently. But if they're constantly getting other input that's telling them different from what you are, then it can be a tough battle. But this is something that, like I said again, if you have working parents, they're not probably there even thinking or even knowing what the children are seeing sometimes, and not knowing what they're seeing and not knowing what to counteract and not instilling anything in them because you're too tired, that leads to a lot of the problems that we're facing too. And like I said, rap and hip hop, they both have a big influence on our children, of course, because those videos, that music is aimed at our community. And, a lot of them aren't focused on family values, being a good father and all of that stuff. I just heard about, what NBA young boy did recently. I didn't know about it when it happened, but saying that he's not even really into fatherhood. He doesn't even really care about it. And, there are people looking at him and looking up to him, and he's a father of multiple children himself. So, that's really not a good look. And that doesn't help our image, and it doesn't help instill things in our children that are going to be healthy for them and our community going forward. And unfortunately, we have become a walking example of how to hate our own people while putting other groups of people on a pedestal. And the fact that we show that much self-hate for each other is not helping us to grow as a Black community. But, I want you to listen at some of the laws that God had given to his people, the Israelites. And I want you to hear some of the laws that he told them to do, and how I want you to think about how some of these practices, if we were able to implement these in the community, and again, these are God's laws. It's not just 10 commandments. It was like 600 some commandments and laws and statutes and all that he gave to them. And just listen at how, if these things were implemented in the Black community, how they would help, right? So Leviticus 19 and 15 through 18. Do not twist justice in legal matters by favoring the poor or being partial to the rich and powerful. So in this, it's just saying, just because somebody's poor, don't give it a favor. Just because somebody's rich, don't be partial with them. Just be fair with everybody in their dealings. It says always judge people fairly. Do not spread slanderous gossip among your people. Uh, Imagine if we did not gossip about each other. Do not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is threatened. Oh, all of the people that got killed in the street in front of other people while they're recording on their phones. Imagine you would not be able to let something like that happen. Do not nurse hatred in your heart for any of your relatives. How many of your relatives don't like you from something that you did in the past? How many of your relatives that you don't like and you still harbor hate in their heart, and you harbor hate in your heart for them? This is telling you that you can't do that. It's not allowed to do that. And also keep in mind that these are not the people of today um, planted in the past. These are people of the past who were following laws that told them to act right with people. So some of the things that your family members might have done, they wouldn't have done because they had serious, punishments for breaking some of these laws. So, but imagine if we all had to instill stuff like this, we would be operating better as a people. Confront people directly so you will not be held guilty for their sins. So instead of going behind somebody's back and saying something, say something to their face. Tell them what's going on. Tell them the issue and squash it immediately. Do not seek revenge or bear grudge against a fellow Israelite, but love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. So it's telling you don't hold grudges. How many grudges are you holding against people? How many people are holding grudges against you? This is telling you not to do that with your own brothers and sisters. So like just looking at getting back to God, like really getting back to God, and not just a superficial thing where, you do what you're not supposed to do. And then you say, okay, forgive me, God. And then he just supposed to forgive you. Like that does not help. That's like, if you had, imagine if you were like that with your children and you just told them all they had to do is say, I'm sorry. and then you're supposed to forgive them, and then you get no punishment at all. Would your children still continue to do the thing over and over once they know that they don't get a punishment? Yes, they will continue to do it. You would have done it as a child yourself, and you know that. So it's like knowing that you really have to adhere to these type of instructions really is a good thing, because it would help to build up the community as a whole, and help hold us to the standard of doing what's right and good amongst each other. So, just getting back to God and just focusing on God is really a major thing. And looking in this book and see some of the things that he told his people to do, you can see how it can help you and others conduct themselves in a better way. Okay, so what now? We've talked about all this stuff. What is going to be ultimately some of the things that we need to do in order to be in a better place as a community, right? So, given the current state of the Black community in 2024, you need to know that there's going to be a lot to overcome. And I know you already know that. So, a lot of people are already set in their ways. There are systems in place. But we have to be ready to know that we aren't going to be able to change everybody the first time we talk to them, or even at all. But what we can do is live our lives in a certain way where they can see the benefit in operating a certain way and being focused on the community and not just ourselves as individuals. When people see that happening and more people doing it, of course, you start with yourself, and then other people will see your light. They will want to do the same thing. And then, it just starts to spread and grow. But we have to start to be the change that we want to see, and also understand that it's going to be hard to implement some things. And, you might not want to just move your whole family back to the hood. I know that's not a reasonable request to do, but, being focused on maybe, if you can find a Black community, going into a Black community and not thinking, okay, I need to go get into a white community to be in a good place, because you can also be in a good place and be in a Black community. It doesn't have to be the hood, but, you know, just starting somewhere with thinking about how can I do something to help the community and benefit the community as a whole when I'm making some decisions. If I can't do it, I can't. If I tell somebody something one time and they don't do it, maybe they might need to see it a few times before they actually act on what I'm talking to them about, right? So just thinking about all of that stuff. And remember Romans 12:2. Stop imitating the ideals and opinions of the culture around you, but be inwardly transformed by the Holy Spirit through through a total reformation of how you think. This will empower you to discern God's will as you live a life, a beautiful life, satisfying and perfect in His eyes. So keep that in mind as the first primary thing in everything that you're doing. And remember that you have to change that mindset from being an individual to being more about your community and our community as a whole. If we are going to start seeing some change in the community, because there are systematic things in place that are working against us, in producing the same result over and over, just like in Who Cloned Tyrone. If you go back and watch that, they were talking about how they are cloning and repeating the same people coming out of the hood because it's systemic, and we have to come up with systemic solutions as a community that's going to help us to override those systemic problems that we are faced against us. So keeping all of this stuff in mind is going to be the best things that we can do to start moving forward and work on ourselves, and then be the light for other people. And keeping God first in what we're doing and getting back to God more is going to really help us to be better as a group of people. I thank you guys for your time and being here. I'll see you guys in the next show.